to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We are looking at Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. And back with us again, we have Scott Carrelli and Nick Jimenez from the Cornetto Minute. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for having us back.
Welcome back.
We are thrilled to have you. And today we are talking about Iron Man Minute 59. We're almost to the hour mark. We are going to be looking at this minute. It starts with a hot slice of Ray's pizza, and it ends with Tony grabbing the pizza and leaving.
So we get to see him be a guy who plays a lot, right? And that's very satisfying in other minutes. And then he kind of throws a tantrum, right? As he's trying to explain how responsible he is on behalf of, the company. And then he takes his pizza and literally goes home.
Right. It's very funny because, he plays it up like so much. Like Obi comes over and he's just like, there's this board of directors meeting. What? This was a board of directors meeting? Like the way that he's like being playful and the look on Obi's face as he says that just says that Tony, like this is Tony. Like he's kind of this goofball who's now trying to find a way to be a more responsible person. And it is very much like this teenager who's been getting in trouble and is trying to be responsible, but still doesn't know how.
But it's subtle too, though, because what we know, what we, the audience, get to know is that he really is what's going on in the secret workshop in the garage is something that's responsible, right? That is the ultimate responsibility. And so it's fun to kind of see him in this mode responding. So kind of this kind of knee-jerk emotional response to Obi because he's got his mind elsewhere.
Also, what a power move on Obi's part to bring pizza from New York, but it's cold because it's from New York. Right. They're in Malibu. He flew it over here.
Look good.
No.
Hey, cold pizza is always good.
Not room temperature pizza. Room temperature pizza is never good. Cold pizza, I'm all for. You put it in the fridge, you drink it with some coffee the next morning. It's great.
Yeah,
but
that's breakfast.
Yeah,
these are guys. The plane that Tony flies to Afghanistan gets there in record time. I'm sure that Obadiah is traveling equally in style and probably has that pizza in an oven in that plane. So I like to think that it's still piping warm,
or at least in one of those big old pizza bags.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ray's famous pizza, aluminum pizza bib box.
Right. Is that what they call those? The bib box?
I don't know where bib came out of my mouth. That's one of those things I'm going to have to retrace. I have a problem.
So is this the last time that Jeff Bridges wasn't Rooster Cogburn?
Well, until Bad Times at the El Royale.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He got back to sort of normal Jeff Bridges territory in that movie.
But no, this was 2008. The 2010s were largely a Jeff Bridges as like, Sheriff Marblemouth.
Yeah.
Yes.
In like every movie.
Right.
Variations of Rooster Cogburn.
Right. Yeah. Crazy Heart was True Grit, obviously. Hell or High Water. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he kind of kept playing that. Even Only the Brave was a little bit. Kingsman was a little bit too when he was in that one. Very much so.
The Giver.
Yeah.
The Giver.
This is not the normal here. This and El Royale, these are not normal. The normal, this is an anomalous performance, and I've missed it.
I think, this is the one that he does. We talked about this earlier. There's the presidential Jeff Bridges, which this is like when he was the president in The Contender. Mm-hmm. And then there's the dude, and then there's the Rooster Cogburn.
So where's the Starman Jeff Bridges?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's like the 70s Jeff Bridges. That Starman might be the end of the 70s Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, that's a whole different Jeff Bridges. All right, so there is the fourth, or that is technically the first Jeff Bridges. Let's just say that
70s Jeff Bridges is like average man,
like Peter Flynn,
Jeff Bridges.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Peter Flynn,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
I love Jeff here. I love the bald Jeff, like you said earlier, Pete. He carries it so well, and I love when he's toplit. When we get that shot of him playing at the piano, and it's such a great look. The way that the light's hitting his bald scalp. It's great.
Oh, it's so good.
My kingdom for a Jeff Bridges Lex Luthor.
Oh, yes.
That would be an interesting. Has there been somebody yet who's been a villain in one universe and done a villain in another?
Sure.
I feel like that has to be. I'd have to think about it.
Demon Houndsu is in Guardians, and he's also in Aquaman.
Oh, that's right.
It's happened a couple times, I feel like. Michael B. Jordan. No, those are both Marvel. He hasn't been in a DC movie yet.
No, he hasn't been in a DC movie yet.
Is The Losers a DC movie?
It's Vertigo.
Okay.
Not really DC.
Chris Evans.
Yeah, Chris Evans.
Yeah, not quite.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I'd have to think that one through.
It's very interesting. I'd be curious, but you're right. He would be great.
You talk about power moves, like to the way they stretch this or the way they design this character. You don't do this. You don't carry yourself with that, bald head and the big beard without knowing that you're coming off as sinister in some way. You are a sinister guy. And, I think that's so great because, we have these conversations with him where he's trying to be, he's trying to be sensitive. He's trying to
brought him
be
pizza.
Understanding. Yeah, he brought him pizza for crying out loud. But he's still deep down, like he wears sinister all over.
There's actually a weird thread in this movie of like Tony and Obadiah using like food as a way of like communicating power. Like there's that scene earlier where Tony had like his pocket full of burgers.
Oh yeah.
And then Jeffrey's like, "Oh, can I get one of those?" He goes, "No, this is the last one." And now, and now we have like Tony taking pizza or Obadiah take, no, this is my pizza. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
It's true.
Well, it's so funny because it is like all of a sudden, because Tony's acting like a spoiled little child, all of a sudden Obadiah starts acting not quite more in the next minute, but it's funny the way that they interact with each other. And I like that through this minute, we really kind of get this. It is like a frustrated parent trying to deal with a kid and trying to explain things to him. And I mean, he does it so well. I love listening to him kind of spin it and talk. And this whole, they're claiming post-traumatic stress. They're filing an injunction. The way that he's kind of explaining all of that, I think works so nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't quite figure out, I feel like Pepper is generally in Tony's corner. But in this one, it's almost like she's just sitting there and she's just there to throw in this one stinger at him. And it's almost like she's got this jab of her own to throw at him, which I think is kind of funny because it's not really helping.
Yeah. I mean, for the majority of the scene, Pepper just sort of has an air of like the personification of that Kermit meme of just like tipping back the tea and like, I wouldn't know anything about that. Just really just like, I'm just minding my own business over here. It's really funny. And you could tell that they were in the blocking of this scene, they were struggling to give her something to do.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they needed to give her that line and they knew what they wanted these guys to do. But they're like, well, what's she doing? It's like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure.
She's laptopping.
She's laptopping.
She's businessing.
Yeah.
She has been laptopping here in this room before. So at least it's consistent. It's consistent with her character.
And she does have a plate of presumably pizza crumbs. She was eating at one point.
Right. Although the pizza, he takes the first slice out of it. So I don't think it's pizza.
Interesting. So she was eating other foodstuffs.
He also brought like crazy bread.
Maybe there's another fresh pizza.
Maybe
from around the corner.
It was Domino's.
That's crazy to me. The idea that Jeffrey just stopped to get pizza in two different states,
2 different time zones.
Yeah.
Ray's Pizza. I didn't realize this, but I didn't realize how big of a thing Ray's Pizza is. There are at least 36 Ray's Pizzas in New York, and their names are not always, but often slightly different, like Ray's Pizza, Ray's Pizzeria, Famous Ray's Pizza, Ray's Famous Pizza. And it was kind of this thing. The first one started in 1959, and just people kept making them. And it's just like this thing. It's a joke to have like a Ray's on every corner, even though none of them are really related. And I think that's really funny. Like I had no idea that was like a New York thing about Ray's Pizza.
That's fascinating.
So this is the thing where it's a bunch of pizza places and may or may not involve somebody named Ray. They're just taking the name and making a Ray's Pizzeria.
Somebody even made one called Not Ray's Pizza.
And that's brilliant.
It kind of reminds me of the old Django movies. Now there was like 8 million Django sequels. But
Exactly.
in one, he's like a scuba diver.
Yeah.
When he's a cowboy.
Right. I did like the touch that the box of pizza is sitting on a really nice backgammon board that Tony has on his little table there. A nice nod to the scene earlier when he's playing backgammon with Yinsen, and to the deleted scene where they're bragging about the fact that both of them are expert backgammon players.
Oh.
Seems appropriately lackadaisical that they would eat on a beautiful backgammon board.
Yeah, it's just thrown there.
Yeah.
They're just very casual about all of that.
They're really rich.
They're really rich. They don't care. They'll just buy a new one.
So this is what it looks like. 1% backgammon.
It's interesting the way that this scene is scripted versus how it ends up playing out here in the film. In the script, it really feels like this conversation between Obadiah and Tony, where, Tony comes out and he's just like, he's got this energy and he's like, I've got this big idea. It can pull the company in a whole new direction. And Obadiah is great, get me the plans and everything. And Tony's like, I had a moment there when I was reluctant, but now I know I made the best decision. I feel like I'm doing something right finally. Thanks for supporting me in this. And then there's a hint at the board meeting and everything, and about the injunction and everything and all of that. But Obadiah is very much on Tony's side, like through all of this, and there's none of this fighting about all of this, and it plays so differently in the script. It's nice the way that it works here because it really feels like there's a lot more conflict, and in the script it feels almost like Obadiah is like it feels like Tony is very immature and unaware of things, and Obadiah is just like, there you go, there. I don't know. It was oddly scripted, and I think that they did a much better job of finding a way to actually put it together here.
Well, it's much more efficient.
I think that's this movie's like sort of magic spice, is the fact that they took a script that was like kind of ho-hum with a good set of bones, and they just rewrote everything, as they were going along.
Yeah. It can be rough on people, but they ended up delivering, because there are times where that is the issue and it just is a disastrous film. So somehow we all lucked out.
Yeah, I mean, you had a director. Mm-hmm. That'll do it.
And also a good actor.
And a good actor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got Downey Jr. with like so much, charisma for days, and he can, work his way through a scene really, really well.
And if I'm not mistaken, he and Jeff Bridges and Favreau would often go out and just kind of act out these scenes on set and sort of work out the dynamics together.
Yeah.
And then bring it back to the camera.
Right.
Yeah, right. And I don't know at what point in the production, like at this point when they're filming this, was Stain already scripted as the bad guy? Because I think initially, they had Stain in there, but they were kind of going down this road of the Mandarin, and then they thought maybe they'd do the Crimson Dynamo, and then they settled on Stain. And I wonder, like at this point when they're making this, was Stain still kind of a good guy in this film, getting set up to be the bad guy in the next film?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting speculation. Like I really wonder kind of when all that came down the pike, and how Jeff Bridges was playing it, and if it really would have affected his performance at this particular point.
It would make sense considering how I feel about Obadiah Stane in this movie, which is that, I think this movie is a perfect film for 4/5 of it, and then I think that the last bit, like when Obadiah like finally turns and uses that sonic device on him, and then like becomes the Ironmonger, I think everything in that is just kind of
Tony.
It just comes out of nowhere, and like I don't really know what his plan is exactly. Like he's like, I'm gonna kill you, Tony, and it's like, well, but then what? Like how are you gonna?
Always hated you,
how are you gonna
Tony.
explain that he died? Yeah, how are you gonna explain that he died? How are you gonna explain what the Ironmonger is and Iron Man? Like how are you gonna explain all of this away? Like what is your plan exactly?
Yeah, what's the version of what's the morning after his plan working well?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, especially when they've spent 4/5 of the movie setting the character up as somebody who's brilliant and in control and can see around corners.
Right. So I've always had that issue with the sort of last reel of this movie with Obadiah Stane. I think it's pretty rough. And so it makes sense that they couldn't land on a villain, which also makes sense because if you look at Iron Man's rogues gallery, it's like, yeah, I mean, any of these, none of this matters. So we can just choose any of these because none of these are like good villains. Like they're all just kind of, B- villains at best.
Right.
It's not a small wonder that the MCU was marked by less than impressive villains the first few years.
That's true.
They started with the Hulk and Iron Man.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they really, it took some time to get a handle on that and what they could do with the Iron Man villains. Cause I read through just a ton of those early Iron Man comics, and they're fun to read. But yeah, there weren't a lot of villains that really stood out at all.
Absolutely.
Until Stain. I mean, Stain is the one that, he was in there for quite a stretch. And even then, his villainy worked best when he was the one who bought out Stark Industries and was just the one who kind of destroyed Tony as a businessman. Mm-hmm. When he finally becomes Ironmonger, it's like one issue and that's it. And then it's like the end of the movie, right? You get all of a sudden that one issue and then it's over.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels a lot like the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose we have a little bit more to talk about tomorrow. So today, why don't we talk to you guys about Marvel and your place in the MCU and Marvel Comics and everything? How did you guys were you guys always comic readers? Did you start watching the MCU films right out of the gate? What's your story?
Yeah, I mean, I remember very specifically when this came out. I was living in Florida at the time and was really, really excited for this thing because of the practical effects, because of just like the look of it and everything. I remember seeing that first reel on like videos, like pirated videos at Comic-Con, and seeing that OG, that Mark I Iron Man suit walking out of the cave. And I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be insane. And Iron Man was not a character that I had much of a connection to. I think at that point I had read sort of Bendis's New Avengers. And so I was kind of familiar with the Avengers, but the Avengers were not characters that I had, particularly fond feelings for, like other than Captain America, because I had read Brew Baker's Winter Soldier run. That sort of initial arc. And I loved that. And that was sort of like the arc that made me fall in love with Captain America as a character. But the other Avengers, Thor never really did a lot for me. Iron Man in the comics never really did a lot for me. So I was sort of really looking forward to this movie despite myself. There was just something about it that felt like, yeah, this is going to be the next big thing. And I have to see this as soon as it opens. And, I remember seeing it, I think I even went to the midnight show, and like at that midnight show, I remember hearing like, you have to stay through the credits. Like, and it's like, what do you mean?
Right.
What do you mean I have to stay through the credits? And so like, I'm staying through the credits, and I'm just thinking the whole time, like, man, I better not get punked. Like there better be something after this, or I'm going to be really upset. And then we have that great Nick Fury scene and sort of cinematic history happened. But yeah, I mean, this movie like blew me away, and was like, I can't believe, these movies can be like this. And, I was always a Spider-Man guy growing up, and, Spider-Man has sort of always been my favorite superhero. So I love Spider-Man, and I love that energy. And Tony, in this film, Robert Downey Jr. definitely endows Tony with that energy, that sort of Spider-Man cocky energy that Spider-Man can have occasionally, and sort of bent it into like a playboy philanthropist mode, rather than, Spider-Man, being sort of like cocky in that that's just like how he deals with his nervous energy. And it just worked like gangbusters. I mean, this is who Tony Stark is in the comics now. It's so weird. I recently read Bendis's New Avengers run again, like a few months ago, and I was reading Iron Man. I was like, man, this Iron Man just feels so strange. I was like, what is the deal with this? And then I realized that it was pre this movie. It was like from 2005. So this was a Robert Downey Jr.-less Iron Man, I was like, oh, this is what Iron Man was like before Robert Downey Jr. started playing him. And I was like, oh man, this is so weird. And I think Civil War was probably the last time that happened. Like the Civil War comic was the last time that Iron Man made an appearance. And then everything after that has been inspired by Robert Downey Jr. more or less. Right. And that's how powerful his take on this character was. And it not only changed history as far as like Iron Man, as a character in the comics, but then it also launched the MCU on his back, which is just insane. It's an insane performance that, I feel like doesn't get as much credit as it probably should. But I think it's fantastic.
Well, I think largely, the film, I think, carries so much weight in the MCU, but I think you're right. A lot of that is what Robert Downey Jr. did here. I don't know if we would have really had the MCU had Robert Downey Jr. not played Tony Stark here.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, it's a testament to his talent that we don't hate him for how much money he makes doing these.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like, I think the most highest paid actor that's ever been. And it's like, yeah, because he makes it all human. Even going into Infinity War, where he's like talking to wizards and space mountain people with rocks for faces, he's still like that guy. And I think it's what carries regular people through these movies, as weird as they get and as like comic booky as they get. It's almost funny watching this now, and it's kind of more of like a Michael Crichton, Tom Clancy thriller. That I think really hit audiences in a unique way, where it's like, this isn't what a superhero movie really sounds like. Right. I love this movie. It came out May 2nd, 2008. And I remember just having a feeling kind of like Scott, just as a high school movie nerd, just like, this is going to be a crazy summer. And like Speed Racer and like Crystal Skull and Dark Knight and Hellboy 2. And I don't know, like I just remember sitting down and watching this movie start and feeling like just enthusiasm. And I think this movie just has like a really enthusiastic young heart to it that, I think makes it still really watchable now, 11 years later.
There are 20 Marvel films now, 21 very soon, and even more on the heels of that. So we don't want everybody to try ranking all of their movies, but what are your top 5 of the films of the MCU?
Ooh. Let's see. For me, it's still Ant-Man. Ant-Man's still my favorite. I know that's not a popular choice for a lot of people, but there's something about that movie that just absolutely just hits me in exactly the right way. It's like everything I kind of want from this kind of movie. And there's a lot. I know a lot of people. I remember it got criticized for just being sort of like, too much like Iron Man, which I don't, I see the similarities, but I don't really agree. But I do see the structural similarities.
Yeah, it's a heist movie.
Yeah, it's a heist movie. So it is very different. But, a lot of people like pointing out that like, the villain's kind of the same. He's like a bald, like evil businessman, But I really love Ant-Man a lot. I think Ant-Man's probably my favorite. After that, probably the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I really like, and then I don't know. Then it starts to get murky, because then you start dipping into the stuff where it's like, there's some really good stuff, right? Like I love Civil War, I love Winter Soldier, and either one of those could be my third. I think my third one ends up being like depending on my mood a lot. Yeah. Because, I love those Captain America movies, but they're also a little heavier than the other ones, so I don't watch them as often. Right. Because I like the lighter ones a little bit more. Like I'm more likely to watch, a Thor Ragnarok over a Winter Soldier. But Winter Soldier is also like a phenomenal movie. So I don't know. I don't know where my third one would be, but it's probably somewhere in there. What about you, Nick?
I have it on my Letterboxd, so I'm just going to read this out.
Oh, there you go.
Top 5.
A man who's prepared. Love it.
Starting.
Hey, if you've got a Letterboxd, let's hear all of them.
Okay.
Go down the whole list.
All right, so here we go. Just like a bullet. From the bottom to the top. So we're going to start from the very bottom. Thor: The Dark World. And even that has some fun parts.
Sure. They all do.
Yeah, it does. It does, yeah.
Incredible Hulk. Iron Man 2, which I think is worth it for Rockwell and Mickey Rourke. Avengers Age of Ultron, super, super flawed, also super, super interesting. Thor, really fun, perfect summer movie. Ends with a really good Foo Fighters song. Ant-Man, really fun. Miracle that it's as good as it is. Considering like all the hullabaloo towards making it. Civil War, really, really fun. Not a great Captain America movie, kind of a weird Iron Man movie. But
great Avengers movie.
Great Avengers movie. Has some really cool, Spider-Man, forget
right.
about it. Black Panther, forget about it. Ant-Man and the Wasp, just really fun, kind of like a 90s Chris Columbus comedy, but like in a Marvel superhero world. It was really fun. Infinity War, holy crap. So many entertaining moments. Captain America, First Avenger, Spider-Man, Homecoming, Winter Soldier. Now we're getting into the top. Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy. Top 5, Avengers. Thor Ragnarok. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Wow.
Now this is controversial. Number 2, the second favorite MCU movie is Iron Man 3.
Wow.
Your second favorite is Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I love it. I
do love Iron Man 3 is in my top 10 for sure.
I love Shane Black. I just love the energy.
I
and
love that.
Yeah, and the visual wit, and I love the set pieces, and I just love what it has to say. I like that it pisses people off with the Mandarin.
Bold choice. Yeah, bold choice.
I can't wait to talk about that one.
And then my number 1, much less controversial, but Black Panther.
Yeah.
Great list.
Thank you.
There's some interesting choices in there.
Also gratified to
really
hear
great,
that the first Avenger is as high as it is.
Oh, that's in my top 5. That's in my top 5.
Yeah, it's one of my very favorites. Absolutely.
That's one I'll throw on a lot. I love First Avenger.
Yep.
That's one I really struggled with when I first watched it. Probably the first 4 or 5 times I watched it, I was like, I just didn't. I never clicked with it until my most recent watch when I just went through the whole thing. And I feel like I finally got it, and I really, really enjoyed it.
It was one of those movies between the two of us was really divisive between me and Andy. I was really mad that he didn't like it for the longest time. I took it so personally.
Yeah, it's a movie that you really have to get on its wavelength. Either like you're in it or you're not, because it is such a sort of old fashioned kind of movie. It's definitely sort of recalling like old Hollywood style movies. Like it's trying to, be a little Richard Donner Superman and a little Rocketeer. I mean, same director. But you definitely have to get on that wavelength. And I think that, we're so out of that world in blockbuster filmmaking that backlots and stuff like that, it can take people out of the movie. And that much earnestness can take people out of the movie. And I think you really have to be on its wavelength to really, to get it. And that's not to say that people who don't are like stupid, because it's nothing to do with that. It's really just about like understanding what that movie's doing and accepting it for what it is.
Yeah, I think I struggled because, I found him to be kind of a boring character because I'm like, okay, he's an eager goody two shoes at the beginning and he's still that same character at the very end of the movie. And I'm like, okay, so there's nothing interesting about him as a character. But then I realized as I was watching it this last time, it's really about how he's kind of creating this change in people around him. And like Tommy Lee Jones's character, I found so much more interesting this last time is kind of watching him kind of see him change and everything. So it made it that much stronger for me as I watched how Steve Rogers was kind of making this change in other people.
Yeah. No, I love that movie. It's also the only, I think it's the only Marvel movie with a believable romance in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll try to think.
I like T'Challa and Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah.
Yes.
That one doesn't.
I think that's the one that would live up to it.
I see. I don't agree just because they don't spend enough time on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I would want more of it.
Certainly, I will agree. It is definitely the most romantic MCU movie.
Yes,
maybe like with Thor underneath it.
Yeah, and Thor.
It's more of a romantic comedy.
Sure.
This is more of like a sweeping,
romance,
swooning Casablanca.
Yeah,
and I think that was part of the era, right? It's kind of capturing that 50s era with that romance. So I thought they did a good job with that. But I mean, I like, I love what we're going to get later in this movie with Tony and Pepper.
Yeah, I mean, there's chemistry, but I wouldn't call it a romance. But then again, I'm very picky when it comes to those things, as you'll hear me talk about on Spider-Man Minute. I mean,
his big sweeping romantic gesture at the end of the trilogy is like cleaning out his garage.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's wrap it up for today, everybody. Where can people find you guys?
You can find us at duelinggenre.com. Go check out our very first Movies by Minute podcast that we did, Back to the Future Minute. We did 345 episodes of that, 340 episodes of Back to the Future Part 2, and Back to the Future Part 3, and 5 episodes of Back to the Future The Ride. So we
not the animated series though.
No, not the animated series, because none of the creators have anything to do with that.
Scott personally hates it,
and I hate it. I think it's not good.
But The Ride, that's icing on the cake.
Yeah. So we covered that franchise soup to nuts. So go check that out if you wanna hear us sort of evolve into confident Movies by Minute podcasters through the first season of that show. Much
like Tony Stark.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. So check that out. Back to the Future Minute.
Awesome. Magnum opus.
Well, that is it for today's show, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, make sure to subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at patreon.com/thenextreel. Until next time, true believers.